Welcome to the House with a Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing Jennifer's Body, because February is also Women in Horror Month. So we thought we'd tackle a movie that was written and directed by women.
And as men, we're going to rip it down.
Yeah, we're going to teach them to try to take away the month of February from other social causes. But, yeah, so we'll be covering Jennifer's Body. And something that's interesting to me when you look at mostly on the YouTube comments, because I think when people download the audio version of podcasts, they're kind of just, okay to listen to the entire thing in a stretch. They don't get as upset easily. So things I have seen on YouTube is sometimes people get upset on these episodes because we talk about stuff before we get to the movie discussion. In any episode, you can go into the video description if you're watching it or viewing it via YouTube. Look in that video description, and it'll show the different segments, and it will show the time they start and what we talk about in it. So,
and on our website has a timestamp.
Yes, and the website has the timestamps. And if you're listening via the Apple Podcast or iTunes, it shows in the show notes. It shows the times. If you're subscribed via like an RSS podcast app, the notes will have that information too. And Stitcher has those notes, and Google Play through that app will have the notes, the Google Podcast or whatever. So wherever you're listening, you can see what we cover. And if you only want to listen to the movie discussion, you can jump ahead to that part. Because I've seen people voice some frustration with that. So, but there's a lot of different podcasts that I listen to that do similar things where they cover multiple topics and then they just have to put in the notes what the times are.
Well, I mean, I like it because we can kind of give a voice to smaller films that maybe we don't all watch. You know what I mean? Or something like, hey, I recommend this, or just, talk on news and stuff. Like this is an outlet. Instead of us writing news for the website, writing small reviews or previews, this just does everything in one, one.
Because it's hard to, especially like with me, I've been super busy with work lately, so it's been hard for me to sit down and do much of anything. Because I would start working at 8 a.m., 6:30 p.m., I'm starting to get done. And then I have to go like make dinner and all that stuff. And then I get like emails, I go and check, and it's just been crazy. So it's hard to spend time to do things right. So we figured instead of half-assing, trying to do a bunch of posts and stuff consistently, we just cover it all on our podcast. But
even still, we often record two of these back to back
and off schedule.
So we don't have the most updated news on that second one sometimes. Yeah. But I mean, you guys get your news from Bloody Disgusting or wherever if you really need
Twitter.
it.
People are screaming about stuff immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before we get into discuss the movie, we'll go through some brief news and things we've been watching. And on news, so I'm trying to remember what the timing all these were. So our short film Shared was, speaking of Bloody Disgusting, was shared by their World of Death series. So that's where they share, independent short films that get submitted to them. And they changed their format for, I think they did up to episode 200. So after that, they've changed the format so that each month, instead of releasing multiple episodes in the month, they're just releasing one episode that has, a number of episodes combined, that I think usually come around to like 30 minutes, maybe their target or somewhere around that range. And they could be, like 4 or 5, 6, or, 3 or something, depending on how long the ones are. And that way the episode stays up for a month, and then it gets pulled at the end of the month in case any of the short films had distribution deals or things around them. So that way it's not tied up indefinitely on something you don't control. It's just up for a month, because I think that allowed them to get more people to submit who didn't want their short to be out of their control somewhere. Because, we've sold our short films for tens of thousands of dollars. That's a joke. I think between the YouTube ad revenue and the Amazon video ad revenue, we've maybe made $40 across all of them. And that's being very optimistic on that number. It might be a lot lower.
Pays for a small pack of light bulbs just to light your house so you can see the equipment, not to light the set.
Yeah, it paid for soft drinks and chips for one of the shoots.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Shared is out there. You can check it out on Bloody Disgusting site. I believe if you currently go to like our Instagram, it's the link in our bio. And we had shared it from our Facebook page and stuff like that. So go check that out if you want to. And then the short film that Chad directed, They Knock, should be out now or out very soon when you're listening to this. And you can check that one out. And that was the second short he's directed. The other one was Plucked, that came out last year in 2017.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's so crazy because now it's 2019.
Yeah,
So-
because 2018 we did not shoot that last summer. You know.
Yeah, in 2018 we shot that. We shot They Knock in October, and then with the timing of it, it was just getting finished up.
We're
at the beginning
just
of this year.
tweaking audio basically at this point.
Tweaking it.
Yes, tweaking. So
You can keep an eye out for that and check it out. But other stuff, Jason Blum, we talked about Halloween. So it sounds like they're definitely making a sequel, and they'd like to make multiple sequels. And I think that kind of, so if you go back and listen to our discussion of the Halloween 2018, I think that the announcement of all these impending or planned sequels, I think kind of diminishes and hurts my opinion of this movie as a standalone. Because if the idea was the Halloween 2018 was a standalone, and then the ending was definitive and, he's actually dead, then give that a better appraisal. I would kind of stick more with my original opinion. But even if it was, this is part one of a two-parter that closes off all these loops for all of the characters and gives you more of the epic confrontation you thought you were going to get, then I'm okay with that too. But if it's we've rebooted the cycle and we want him to be killing people well into his 90s, then I kind of think, well, what was the point of all the fanfare around it? I mean, I know it's money and it's a franchise.
yeah.
And people want the movies to be around, even if it's this weird cycle where people are upset that they're not being made. They push and push for the movies to get made, and then once they do get made, they shit all over them and every decision that comes out about it, because people want the movie to somehow be the exact same thing as it was in 1978.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing with, our next episode too, we're doing Friday the 13th.
The 2009 edition.
And yeah, I don't know what people, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they want something that is just feels like it was pulled right out of that era.
They want it to be the same, but not, so they want it to be the same, but not too much the same, but then also not too different.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what people want out of these sequels.
Because I had said before, like,
I want something different, and then it kind of turns it on its head. Like, I like that, but I understand if people just want to, but it's like, it's a weird thing because there is a very limited audience that just wants that exact experience. You know what I mean?
Well, like the idea that I had said, like, I don't know, like a while back, is like for Friday the 13th, the name inherently release, make a Netflix or streaming series where you have 13 episodes that can be whatever length you want, from like 20 minutes up to an hour, directed by different like indie directors doing different takes on the character and mythology. And you have it drop on a Friday the 13th, and there's a ton of buzz around that. And it's something where if you keep the budget low for each episode, which you definitely could, especially if you're reusing some of the sets and effects and stuff, you could probably knock that out for cheaper than a feature film and get it to be something that's interesting and doesn't really lock you into any direction with the franchise. And then the reaction to that tells you what fans responded to out of like the different iterations of it to kind of give you an idea of where to go next.
Yeah.
And that would be...
I have some, watching the reboot, I had kind of some ideas like, what I liked about the original, but I'll save that for the next podcast too.
But just these franchises, they keep, being kicked around, and people talk about wanting to make more and things to come back.
And I think it was Collider, maybe. I don't know who broke this, but Scott Teems is supposedly writing the sequel. He's also writing Stephen King's Firestarter, the adaptation of that. The Halloween sequel I'm referring to. But also, so I think maybe Danny McBride and David Gordon Green might be on as producer roles, but it sounds like that's probably it. So 1428 Elm Street, the website. Okay, they're posting from Cinema Blends is saying that Jason Blum. Oh, speaking with Movie Phone, so it's like 15 people removed, but they are at least sourcing this. I'm not clicking through the links, but Jason Blum doesn't actually have the rights to pursue a sequel yet. We had talked about it, but right now we're not shooting any Halloween movies right now because we don't have a deal rights to the sequels. But I certainly hope to make this is part of the quote. But I certainly hope to make 10 more. But I'll start with one more. So
it sounds like they're trying to get everything in place for this first sequel, and then I guess like all this stuff comes down to money. If it makes enough money, there's no way they're going to leave it all.
And the deal works where Blumhouse gets enough of a cut to make it worth it their while, and then you know what I mean. The rights holders gets enough to where they feel like Which I'm sure the right holders want like a 70-30 split or something,
I think they would have to realize that a sequel is likely to not surpass or equal the performance of Halloween 2018. It would likely be lower because that's the way sequels work.
For me, minor spoilers, I was disappointed in the way that film ended, but honestly, financially, they left themselves an out to maybe get one more little boost of, of a decently, or a Halloween film that makes a decent amount of money. If Jamie Lee comes back, you know what I mean? Like left that open enough to where, hey, we'll do a 1-2 punch, make a little bit of money, and then see where things go. But dude, just come on, like you said, work out a deal, get Shudder on board. Just make some low budget versions of these films.
Let's see, because Halloween 2018 made worldwide $253 million and domestically $159 million.
I mean, honestly, I feel like if I was to say, oh, I expected to make this, like, I would like, this is maybe even pushing it too. I would say, okay, I would think a sequel would make 120 million.
I think,
what I mean? I think that would be okay, safe bet worldwide.
I think that they would, so I think if they were to make a sequel, at a budget of $10 million, they would be lucky for it to gross 100 million worldwide.
Yeah.
And if they don't have Jamie Lee in it, then I think the 100 million would be like aspirational, because the slasher franchises without like a big event tentpole feel to them don't have the same draw.
Well, and two, I wonder what the impression of that Halloween reboot will be here as we get closer to maybe another sequel. Like, you know what I mean? Because fans' opinions change over time sometimes.
Yeah, because a lot of movies that were revered or loved at the time are kind of sneered at now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was that news. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. I mean, worthy of discussion is that Ted Bundy movie is going to be on Netflix.
Yeah, that was shot here in
Northern Kentucky. Some people from this area were in it in some forms of roles.
Mm-hmm.
But spoiler alert for real life. If you search for Ted Bundy, you'll find out what happens in that movie probably. I mean, they're going to show like a slice of things and not show the entire story, I think, and show it like from a perspective. But it's always interesting, these true crime based properties. It's like, well, it's real life, so everyone kind of knows how a lot of these things end.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes some of the suspense out of things. You're like, well, are they a killer or aren't they? It's like, well, nope, they were.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've heard good things about the way the director handles this. Because he also did the Ted Bundy tapes, right?
Yeah, the Ted Bundy tapes for Netflix. So he did both the documentary series and the movie. So I guess was just really on a tear for that story. But
yeah.
So I guess we can move into discussing what we've been watching. Like I said, I did watch the Ted Bundy tapes. And I watched Abducted in Plain Sight, so some true crime series on Netflix. The Ted Bundy tapes were interesting, just because, I remember the broad strokes of what happened with Ted Bundy. I didn't remember the specifics, and a lot of the stuff, like, when he was on death row and all that stuff was when I was very young, so I obviously don't remember that. But I remember, like, the pop culture element of it, but it's funny rewatching, not funny, but, like, when you rewatch it, and it's, back before serial killers were the subject of all kinds of hit movies and series, and before it was all like very popular culture thing. It was somebody that, killed and abducted and killed and raped multiple women across multiple states, and was kind of like a celebrity, and then was like, acting as his own lawyer at trial. And made just kind of like a show out of it, and all these crazy things, and you kind of like that really wouldn't happen today. And dude who at points was arrested for kidnapping, but also people definitely thought that he was a murderer responsible for like dozens or over 10 deaths, was treated with respect and allowed to go and like read in the library and read about stuff that he could use in his defense for his case and stuff without protection, not handcuffed. And like people in the courtroom and stuff treated, like when they talked to him, there wasn't contempt and hatred in their voice. And you just compare that to the way a lot of like criminal things go today. Somebody gets caught with a small amount of marijuana, and then the judge is talking about how they're a blight on humanity and they deserve the book thrown at them and blah, blah, blah. So it's just funny to see somebody sitting there. It's like, we know this man is responsible for killing like at least 30 women. And then the judge is like, well, it's a shame that you turned out the way you did, but, I hold no ill will against you. And it's like, dude, he killed and raped how many women? I mean, watching that show, like, he definitely had mental conditions that may have been spawned by childhood trauma or something. But at that point, once you've killed multiple people, whatever the point or the reason or the cause of that in your psyche isn't as important as this guy's a monster. He needs to be destroyed. Because he did escape and then killed more people. So it's just like, it's funny, or not funny, but it's just watching this show and seeing how he was treated back then. It's like today there are people, it is interesting seeing the way that he responded to questions. And there's people in recent news who responded similarly. They're like, how dare you impugn my character?
It's, and a lot of people brought up the point, it's the whole thing with his physical appearance also, like, if somebody is grossly unattractive, then they're naturally, more demonized, even on a subconscious level, maybe.
As opposed to where, he's not Zac Efron. He wasn't Zac Efron in this new movie, Handsome or whatever. But, he was a clean cut guy that had girlfriends that, wore suits, was a college graduate who was a law student, who was like somebody that was a pretty likable personality, seemingly. He worked on the re-election campaign for Nixon, was involved in like the Republican Party, was a member of the LDS Church. So like somebody that at the time would have seemed pretty normal. And then like they let him, like he showed up to some of like the discussions and trials and stuff wearing like a bow tie and dressed in a way that was like very eye-catching. It's like, I don't know that they would let some people do that now.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you're on Twitter, the whole thing about everybody, all these people talking about wanting to bone Ted Bundy and all this
and
stuff.
And then Netflix even said like, hey, there's literally thousands upon thousands of shows and movies on our service with men that you can want to be with that aren't murderers.
Yeah, the serial killer fascination is just so weird. Like, I understand, I guess, I guess the thing in the pit of your stomach, like, the fear from them and the desire to understand why somebody would do this,
Yeah.
But it's also the thing about making so many people celebrities, and that's like the hottest thing, you know what I mean, on Netflix, which is what most people watch, is true crime documentaries. And
because like Making a Murderer
it's very weird to me.
Well, and there's a lot of things like
it was one thing when it was like kind of more of a niche thing, I think. Yeah, when people were in their bottles and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in this, and it was fine. But it's like, dude, I feel like it's starting to get to the point now where it's like,
well, it's as entertainment.
Yeah, it's tipping the scale too much for me to be comfortable anymore.
Because it used to be you'd have just like series or things on just History Channel, or something that would be about like these historical things, and it wasn't much fanfare. It was just interviewing people involved with the process and like judges, or not judges, like lawyers or cops or whatever, and witnesses. But now you have like Making a Murderer and Serial, where some of the most popular like pop culture things in the years that those debuted. And then it made people like bombard police departments with emails and messages about how terrible they are. And like with Making a Murderer, like they did kind of steer a certain narrative to some extent.
Yeah.
And
that's dangerous.
And that does have real world repercussions. This isn't people saying, oh, how dare you treat Luke like this in The Last Jedi. This is like real life people who were still alive.
Yeah.
That could have reputations.
It's not even a story from 100 years ago.
Yeah, this is stuff where some of it's, as recent as the past 10 years. Now, like I said, the Making a Murderer, they did do a good job of presenting some information, but it did seem pretty one-sided in favor of Stephen Avery.
Yeah, I dropped off halfway through that too. Because I'll give this stuff a shot. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Heather Wixson. Do you follow her on Twitter?
I don't remember. I don't check Twitter a ton.
At the Horror Chick. I don't know if it was her. It was somebody that wrote, I don't want to say defense, but they were kind of like, okay, I understand why some people see no value in true crime.
Yeah.
And they, somebody wrote it was a female horror writer, and I can't remember who it was. She was the one that came to mind, but I didn't see it on her feed. They kind of, it wasn't a rebuttal, but it was like what the value is. And I understood that article. I wish I could pull it up. Well, and I get it. I'm not saying it's a damnation of all that stuff. It's just sometimes depending on who is the director of these series or who is handling the documentaries, it can go wrong, and it's becoming so popular and profitable for a lot of people.
I mean, too, like
it's a dangerous path, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between so was it Wild Wild Country was the one I watched that was about the Raj Naresh prom. Like, so the people that were taking over like a small town in Oregon with like an Indian guru and his followers. Like, that to me was like a more thorough recounting that was wildly entertaining. And it did have some true crime element to it. But it was, about a lot of these people and just gave insight into an event that I was not even aware of. That was like a big thing in the 80s and 90s. But when a lot of things are kind of sensationalized and made as more entertainment, or they kind of play a little bit faster and looser with the facts, then I think you do run the danger of people jumping to the defense of people. Because like there's all these people who are like protesting to have like Stephen Avery like, given a pardon and all this stuff. And like rewatching that documentary, or not rewatching, but like watching season 1 and 2, like my thought process on that is like either the dude Avery did it and the police like without warrants found the evidence of it, and then realizing they would destroy their case if they didn't do things appropriately, then kind of staged certain things and manipulated so that the data would, so that the evidence would be found. So they knew he did it for a fact, found all the evidence, but did it in a way that would get thrown out of court. So they had to like kind of, put machinations in place to make it all be found. Or they found the evidence without proof that he did it and were so certain that he did that they made sure they planted it. Because I think that based on the evidence on the show, that's pretty much the only way I think that could have happened. But a lot of people think like the police, I don't think they would kill an innocent person and play, try to pin it on somebody. No matter what you think. I mean, they could if this is like a movie, but like, but a lot of those shows, like, but it's open-ended and it is kind of presented in a one-sided fashion to the point that people probably shouldn't be harassing real-world people still involved with this stuff.
Yeah, I think the responsible thing would for Netflix to be is just to pump the brakes on financing some of this stuff. Just slow down the trickle a little bit. Put out a couple years.
The other thing,
not like it seems like it's every single month.
Well, the other thing too, though, is like with Making a Murder, like the woman who is killed, her family has to see all the fear around this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
And they've even been harassed, and people are like trying to say her brother was involved and stuff. And like, I know that if I experienced like a horrible tragedy or somebody close to me was like brutally murdered in a terrible way, I wouldn't want to have to relive that constantly and have people harassing me over it.
And I couldn't, even if I had the best intentions, I don't know what I would do if I had like made a series and then I saw all this repercussion of it and hurting the families. I'd be like, oh my God, I would just feel like I made the worst mistake in the world.
Because if there's something where it's like a closed, shut case and there's nothing, and it's 100 years ago where nobody alive is, there's like descendants of descendants who aren't even attached to it or care. That's one thing. But
or,
if they're like,
I mean, honestly too, or if you feel like somebody was unjustly prosecuted, you know what I mean? I understand. And maybe that's what it is. And things just I understand, but it's just, it's a really fine line to lock down. So, So also you watched, Abducted in Plain Sight?
Yeah, I mean, that's another one where if you want to be really, without spoiling it, if you want to be really frustrated, watch that show just because some of the people in it are just so stupid.
Yeah, I watched half of that too, and we just stopped because my daughter woke up or whatever, but I just didn't go back to it because, other stuff just caught my eye. But
there's
part of the way through, I'm like, what am I getting out of this? So you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I'm getting, and I don't know the value of this really.
So it's like a small scale story about a family and like their daughter and some guy, like, so it's a small scale story. So it's not like there's a ton of historical importance to it. Like it tied into something that was like a nationwide type thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Now it's still horrific, what happened, but when I watched it, I was like, it's an hour and a half, like, documentary movie, not a series. So
I was happy to see it wasn't a series. So okay, that's all we started.
When you watch it, you just get frustrated. It's like, well, these people are so stupid and we're so manipulated, and this stuff just makes no sense.
They made stupid decisions, but it's like, were they just like grossly naive? You know what I mean? I think part of it was the era, but it was just so naive, and
they were incredibly naive. They fully allowed themselves to be 1,000% manipulated, and someone pulled off what they wanted to completely with very little friction. And it's just like watching that show, like, I don't have a kid, but I'm sure people watching the show, like, you would be watching, like, what were they thinking?
Yeah, well, and to me, I was like, okay, it's not like this. it's not like somebody used modern technology or something to manipulate somebody's kid or whatever. For me, it's like, okay, I understand maybe some people need to watch this that are really naive and kind of, for lack of a better word, dumb, but for me, I'm like, okay, I would never make, one of these decisions. I don't know, I don't know what I'm getting out of this. Like, I'm just watching these people make stupid decisions and watching somebody suffer because of it, Yeah,
I mean,
and so I'm like, I don't know what the value is here other than entertainment, because it's quote unquote such a wild story.
I would never even let somebody interact with one of my pets in the way that these people let someone interact with a child. So it's a frustrating watch, but if you want to be up, and it's an hour and a half, but like I said, the main lesson it takes away is don't be naive and trusting of people, and question their motives. And if something doesn't pass the sniff test, if something seems off, it probably is. So you should probably...
Which is like the basic of all, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm like, there's no lesson here. What is the lesson?
Just don't be a moron. And people are manipulative and terrible, and if given an inch, they'll take a mile. So don't let yourself be... I mean, it's easy to say because everybody found themselves being manipulated by somebody in a way.
And hindsight's 20/20.
But
some of this isn't hindsight knowledge. It's just,
Yeah, it's pretty rough watch. But yeah, so that's out there. So, even though we talked about true crime, I watched 2 things that were about it recently. But
I mean, it is, again, it's like, okay, it's interesting to know what's going on out there in the world of true crime stuff. You know what I mean? To be like, I don't know, keep an eye on it.
Well, too,
it is what's really popular right now.
And the Ted Bundy tapes, it's the lesson to take away is like some people are just evil and are manipulative, and you can't trust that just because someone looks like you, because even in the documentary in that series, people even say, well, he looked like one of us. So when you act like one of us. So even if somebody fits in with you and seems promising, they can still have terrible stuff beneath.
And that's more easy to see the value in that. And too, like you said, it was a nationwide thing. It's just part of our
pop
history.
Culture. Unfortunately, he was kind of fetishized and made into like a heartthrob.
I feel like there's more there to dissect, and not just like factual, but just how people operate, you know what I mean?
Versus this family.
And I understand that, we're looking at how a predator operates and Abducted in Plain Sight as well, but it just feels so long ago that, not that it was that long ago, but as far as the world has changed so much, and people are so much more aware, like even in Abducted in Plain Sight, somebody came in on the FBI and they didn't even, they were more familiar with the term stranger danger, and they didn't really even know the term pedophile, and they had to be explained. Like, that's how naive people were back then on the whole.
Yeah.
So we're way past that now. So it's like, we're just, now the subway, Jarrett, it's like...
And with smartphones and Find My Phone and GPS tracking, a lot of stuff would work differently. But so what did you have a chance to watch?
I watched Horror Noire, the black horror documentary on Shudder.
Shudder.
I'm trying to think of, I can't rattle off the names involved, but some people I fall into are like a Graveyard Sister. I can't remember her name. Twitter handle. I see Twitter handles, and that's what I remember. And Philip Noble, does he run Fangoria, right? The other Fangoria?
I don't remember. I know that
Philip Noble Jr. And I hate to only name those two because there's a ton of people that are that produce the documentary. But anyway, so it covers the kind of history of Black people in horror films, and it goes all the way back to basically the beginning, and it goes back to Birth of a Nation, and how that, I think, the Black man that was in that film was a white guy wearing blackface. Essentially, it wasn't exaggerated blackface, but he was blackface. It wasn't the I think sometimes the imagery that
charcoal black paint with like red lips.
I think he was supposed to be more realistic, but it was a white man playing that, and of course he was demonized and stuff, and the KKK are the heroes of that film.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a very, it's only like maybe like less than 90 minutes, but it still feels very comprehensive. But it definitely it tracks the history of not even just horror, just black people, the representation in cinema. And then it delves into horror once horror becomes, I guess, a bigger thing. And it basically, when things exploded, is blaxploitation, and they even talked about
like the 70s,
the problematic, because it was profitable for some people. That's why it exploded, but it was also obviously very problematic because of the stereotypes it portrayed. But yeah, it basically went on like where black people started in cinema, and then they became kind of the comic relief character. And then even up to today, sometimes some of the things the black people are there to function as is the person that helps the white person survive. Or, you know what I mean? Or
because over the decades, there are, limited instances here and there of where there were movies that had like black characters in central roles that weren't kind of the stereotypical, like you say, comic relief or the kind of, they die first as an expendable friend character. There were examples of that sporadically, but I mean, honestly, it's not been until the past, few years where it's been more, because like Get Out was still seen as kind of like a watershed moment where you had the lead character being black and there was things about racial relations in the movie, and it was from a director who wasn't a white guy.
Yeah.
It was Jordan Peele, somebody who was known from the comedy world and stuff. So it's not, even now, it's not all that common to see kind of, mid or major budgeted and pushed and, uber successful horror films to have, a black cast at the corner of it. Because like that's why like his new movie, Us, Jordan Peele's movie, looks like more of a genre movie, looks like more of a straight up horror movie. Or I'm sure there's going to be some social element to it, but I think he even said like the point of this one wasn't the social message. He just thought it was important to have the family in it be black.
I mean, it's a representation, it's like, why not,
Because not everything has to be about a social issue. It can be, here's just a story.
Yeah. And two, if it's it's a positive portrayal of a normal, black family that is not anything. So it's Jordan Peele is in the documentary as well, and they talk about the importance of Get Out. And I believe even this documentary was greenlit. They said the day after Get Out won the Oscar. I think they believe they got the call and said, okay, let's go forward with it. Like it changed that film changed so much, and they don't harp on it. It's not like that's a half hour of the film.
Yeah.
I think they do a really good job of balancing this film and kind of going through the history, and we get to blaxploitation. Before that, Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
They harp on that for a while, which is important. That was a huge moment.
And like, I don't know if it makes it more important or less important that George Romero didn't have a social message in mind for that so much as it was the best actor he knew that he chose for the lead role. Like, because in some ways that was very progressive for the 60s. And in other ways, it makes people like, I think a lot of people assign a lot of meaning to things now that may have not been intended at the time.
But I mean, the actor knew, he knew the significance of it, hitting a woman, a white woman because, she was acting hysteric and then punching the other guy. Like, he took charge, and he says like, I'm the boss up here.
Yeah,
you
can
be the boss down there. So, I mean, they just hit on so many things so quickly too. And it's just super, I think, well balanced, and it just moves. That's when I started watching very late at night. Normally I will pause and go to sleep and come back. But I just went on through this documentary. Again, it's on Shudder. It's got, I'm not talking about film historians because it's got a lot of great historians that put things in context.
Yeah.
But it's also blended with a lot of black horror actors. Rachel True. I don't know if you follow her on Twitter. From The Craft.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Recently, she was, kind of making a fuss, rightfully so, because there's been some horror conventions and she was
doing reunions for The Craft.
Yeah, not invited at all. You know what I mean? Like, and I think they said like one that she was in with, a lot of people, they got tons of pull. You know what I mean? It was a huge,
You think if you're gonna have 3 of the leads, you could have 4 of the leads.
Yeah. So Tony Todd, Ken Sargos from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, right?
Okay, yeah.
Was he Dream Warriors?
Yeah, like 3 and 4.
Yeah, Jordan. Yeah, 3 and 4. Miguel Nunez from Friday the 13th, Part 3. Yeah, and he was in something else too.
Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Ken Foray, Keith David is always great. So just throwing those names out there just say, hey, I like those people. I should watch this documentary. But also, you know, everything from the film historians is even more important. But they also, they kind of point out their perspective too, because a lot of times some of these actors were playing roles that were, you know, not really helpful for stereotypes. But some of them, you know, some of them were how I would approach it. They were like, look, I knew, but I didn't care because I was getting paid. Like I needed to work. You know what I mean? Like you take the work you can get.
Because I see people who will criticize some decisions that actors or directors or whoever have made now. And it's one of those things where, like, I mean, I understand that sometimes, like, people took the paycheck, but at the same time, like, if you're working a job that's not your passion, I think most people are taking a paycheck.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if I work for a company, do I endorse every decision they make, even if some of them are detrimental to society? No, because I'm not involved in that decision making and not aware of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think most people work for some type of job where, you know, it's not their passion and they're not 100% in control of the decisions. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people do just take a paycheck for a role that on paper might sound better than it turns out to be. And then they're like, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, they dive into that, you know, just all those things. And even like Blackula, that was directed by a black director, and their attempts to add something more to that, you know what I mean? And that was a blaxploitation film that they at least attempted to add in some more commentary, social commentary, and, you know, bring up some things they thought was important. And it's how they were like starting to slide things in and do as much as they could with what they were given. You know, they were given the story of a black Dracula, but here's what we're going to do with it. Yeah. So it's a fun watch, but it's also, I think, extremely, extremely important just to give you context, and even just think about when you see any sort of movie today, you know, the decisions made on screen, and kind of what roles people are given, you know, just like how people talk about females are treated in horror films.
Well, and too, I think too, sometimes people at this point will just, you know, oh, Get Out was only given, you know, all this attention because it had a social message, blah, blah, blah. Like, but if you don't understand the context of why that might be important, you know, above and beyond the movie being a solid movie on its own right, like seeing some things to help reframe the perspective on that, it's like, okay.
And why it was such, you know, where the genius comes from too. You know, it's one thing if you're just watching this, you know, with, you know, blinders on and like, okay, well, I didn't, you know, there wasn't that many kills, and you know what I mean? Like if you're just watching with blinders on and not realizing the, you know, the intelligence behind, you know, nearly every decision made in that film, you know, then I understand why you might not see that, but maybe this film will help you give some perspective on that. I cannot wait to see Us also, just because I loved Get Out as a pure entertainment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not even thinking about that. I love that film just as pure entertainment, but it was because of the social situations and everything. But yeah, I definitely recommend this documentary because I think it's extremely important. There's a lot of documentaries on cult films that I think are very fun, like Not Quite Hollywood. Like that is like one of the most fun genre and cult documentaries, I think. It just tells crazy stories. I think this is fun, but also very important and super educational. And sometimes you say educational, like, oh, it's boring. It's not that at all. You know, you got some great people telling some great stories. I highly, highly recommend it. I wish it was available for rent for people too. Yeah. But I mean, but whatever you would pay to rent it,
you can get a month of
Shudder, and you can probably get a trial. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I
would definitely recommend checking that out. I mean, because that's just going to give you a wider base of perspective too on horror films going forward. It's just going to open your mind a little bit. I think as much as I try to be aware of that stuff, there was obviously plenty of things that, you know, were drawn to light. And honestly, some of the stuff I was like, is that really a connection there? And then sometimes I would think, I would sit and think about it for a while. Think, okay, I kind of guess I get where they're coming from on that end. So there's some things that maybe even I questioned, but who am I to question?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But hopefully this spurs more discussion on some of these things. So yeah, highly recommend that.
Horror Noire. So now I can move into our discussion of Jennifer's Body, the 2009 movie that was, from what I remember, the big thing was, you know, it's Megan Fox post Transformers. It was directed by Karen Kusama and written by Diablo Cody. And Diablo Cody had come off the success of Juno before that. And Karen Kusama is somebody that's been around for quite a while and had directed a lot of things people are aware of. Let's see.
Before that, Eon Flux 2005, she did something before that.
Girl Fight, Eon Flux, episode of the L Word, Jennifer's Body. And then more recently, she had done The Invitation.
Did you watch that?
The Invitation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
pretty good.
Some different TV series, and did a segment in that anthology XX.
What was her segment again?
Hers was the one, I believe, with the mom and the kid that wouldn't eat.
Yes.
And then she directed a new movie, Destroyer, that had
Nicole
Kidman that looked interesting. That I haven't had a chance to watch yet. And then Diablo Cody. So like I said, she had written Juno, and then she also was involved as a writer on Tully and Young Adult, the Jason Reitman movie that had Charlize Theron.
Both those are good. Did you see? Did she do United States of Terror also?
Let's see. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, the extent that all this stuff was written, but was listed as a writer.
For some reason, I thought she was like a creator on that show. But I'm not
possibly.
I'm not for sure though. I just,
creator. Yeah, it's a creator.
Yeah. She was very hot, and she's still working, obviously, but she just I feel like she had a lot of buzz around her after Juno.
Didn't she did some punch up or rewrites on the Evil Dead reboot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Somebody's been working on a lot of stuff, but I think that a lot of the opinion of her work early on was categorized by the Juno dialogue.
Yeah.
In this movie, Jennifer's Body. So I guess we'll have, some spoilers throughout, because you kind of got to get what the concept is to get into discussing it.
Yeah.
So the basic concept, or the basic synopsis from IMDb for Jennifer's Body, is a newly possessed high school cheerleader turns into a succubus who specializes in killing her male classmates. Can her best friend put an end to the horror? And, this was a movie that, at the time I remember the advertisements, because this came out in 2009. I was thinking it was longer than that.
Yeah, so this is 10 years on this film as well. Yeah, there's another good reason to do it.
Yeah, it came out 10 years ago. I remember a lot of the advertising was Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried kissing, and then demon stuff was what I remember from the advertising. And, the movie is a little bit more subversive than that. And it's one of those things where I think it's gotten more of a following since things. It didn't do huge box office. It wasn't a huge slam dunk or anything.
Well, I think too, for me, I was excited for the whole time because I did like Juno. I know you didn't really like the dialogue in Juno. I was fine with it because I felt like, okay, this is supposed to be putting you, just have a flavor to this world of these kids that I was a little bit removed from. So I was kind of excited for this film because I was excited to see what Diablo Cody did. I think I'd listened to a lot of interviews that she had done post Juno.
Yeah.
And just she was I think a former stripper and stuff, and I just kind of liked her rise and seemingly out of the gate, wrote Juno that wasn't that nominated for best screenplay or something.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it obviously got a lot of buzz and was very successful for her, but I knew the perspective of this being directed by a woman, written by a woman. So all the female kissing stuff in there, I was like, okay,
there wasn't male exploitation.
Yes.
It wasn't just some 45-year-old dude writing this. Who are you going to cast for these roles?
I was excited. And just knowing her personality, listening to interviews and stuff, I was excited to see what she was going to do with a horror film.
Yeah.
So that's why I went to see it right out of the gate. And I, just to start off, I loved it when I saw it, and I ended up buying it and watched it several times, shortly after it came out. And I really have always just really liked this film. To me, it felt like it felt like a throwback horror film, but not in just a broad sense. You know what I mean? It felt like it was okay, this person loves horror film from the 80s and stuff. She's not afraid to get wild and crazy with kind of, I'm not saying a goofy concept, but she has fun with the horror, but also this is like Mean Girls mixed with Heathers.
Well, I think that the basic premise, like I said, the concept is a girl becomes a succubus or a demon and kills dudes. And the way they achieve that is actually kind of funny. And I was like, oh, that's kind of clever, because the idea was there's a band that's going to sacrifice a young woman who is a virgin in order for them to be able to get the musical success that they desire. So, there's rumors that, like Robert Johnson, the famous guitar player, sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads to be the best guitar player. And, like there's people talk like Led Zeppelin, these different bands, kind of that had this huge quick success, sold their souls for the success. So there's kind of like the cool like lore to that. But these guys are just kind of like a modern day lame emo band.
I mean, it's like Good Charlotte or something.
Yeah, where they're wearing like guy liner.
I love that at the time too, because like when I was in high school, Good Charlotte and all them, I was not a fan. Yeah. And some people were. So this was just like a little takedown of those. So and that's fine if you like those bands for sure. But like, somebody I dated, loved Good Charlotte and stuff. Yeah. And that's totally fine. But I just love that there's so many things this film comments on, or at least pokes fun at. Because
like in the 80s, you could definitely, even if people loved them, you could definitely make fun of the hair metal bands.
Yes,
they were pretty easy. You can make fun of the hard rock, Metallica type bands. There's all these things you can poke fun at, even if people love those bands or types of music. And with this, it was just kind of like these dudes that were, playing to an audience of like high schoolers that were, how old were some of the actors? Like definitely not, well, I don't know, because some of the people in that movie were probably still able to play, like Adam Brody. So he is 6 years older than me. So when in 2009, he would have been
27 or so.
When the movie came out, he would have been like 30.
Yeah.
If it came out 2009, he would have been around 30. So, because like something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way with some of the bands is like, if the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or whatever, if they are in the general age demographic that their audience is, then it's not as much of a problem for me. Now, granted, there was like in both of those bands, there was like one dude that'd be like a bit older than the other.
Yeah.
But like when you have a band, because remember, like, not to digress on music, but I liked Green Day when they're in the 90s and Dookie and all that stuff. But then with American Idiot, I was like, you're in your 30s and you got your hair spiked up with green and you're acting like you're 12 and you're playing music to an audience and you're playing kind of the lowest common denominator type stuff that's going to resonate. I don't know that I really respect this as much anymore. And like, not a lot of people love that music, but it's like, it's not like the whole, you sold out. I mean, because people said that, what is the song, Time of Your Life or whatever, was like, that's when they sold out. It's like, no, I still like that.
I didn't like that we choose it for our prom song or whatever. Wasn't it our prom song in high school? I did not like that. I voted against that song for that.
I think that
because it's just so sentimental and cheesy, and I obviously was against all that.
Like, not to digress too much, but I think that like we obviously went to the same high school, same year and everything.
We went to prom together.
No, but I think that it was kind of a racial thing because one of the other songs was like a hip hop R&B song. Yes. And then a bunch of the white kids on the baseball team were like, dude, we're not going to vote for that. So then they all made a push to vote for the other
I voted against the Green Day song because I just was like, no, So
I remember that being, like, talk about institutional bias and racism because like a couple of the songs are R&B songs or something, and they all made a decision that, well, we don't want that song to be ours, so let's make sure we vote in the other song by a rock band. But all that digressing was, this movie to me...
Let's just call out everybody that was that voted for that song.
But part of the thing in this movie was kind of like these dudes who are in their late 20s or 30s going after young girls and then making one their sacrifice. Was kind of...
And it was the whole thing of, so they go to the bar. Needy is Amanda Seyfried. Jennifer is Megan Fox. They've been childhood friends, and I don't know. I just love the relationship building from the beginning. Even let's call him Young Neil, Needy's boyfriend, Young Neil from Scott Pilgrim. He, he's like, you guys have nothing. She's like, we got stuff in common. He's like, you have nothing in common. And there's people you're friends with like that you have nothing in common with in high school, especially. So, they go to the bar. Stuff starts going down, and I feel like that scene was probably a little personal, or even just from stories maybe she even heard of being helpless with your friend, getting in a van or a car with some guys, and no good is going to come out of it. So the whole premise is these men prey on her, not sexually, but they prey on her, and the whole crux of her character is that now she preys on men, specifically men. It's not just women.
Well, and the idea was that since the band was looking for a virgin and they looked at Megan Fox, and then their kind of conversation they were having amongst themselves when Needy was within earshot was that, like, I know the type. She's somebody that shows off all of her stuff and acts like she's this, but she's actually a virgin. So Needy, overhearing that, trying to be protective of her friend and trying to discourage them from going after her, says, well, actually, she is a virgin, blah, blah, blah. So then that even makes them double down their decision to take her with them. And then their idea was to sacrifice a virgin to get their success and fame. But when she wasn't a virgin, they sacrificed her. That then made her become a demon. And it's like, that's pretty clever.
Yeah. And I love the whole sacrificial scene, too. Like, I laughed out loud in the theaters watching that. Just like, because it's just played for comedy so well.
Yeah.
I think the tone is so perfect of it, it's the suspense of them getting ready to stab her, and then they start, and just because they're just annoying, like this annoying band, they start singing Jenny just because it pops in his head, and then start stabbing her. Like, I think that scene is so well done. And Adam Brody, I think, is so good in this film.
Yeah, he was a good choice for this type of...
Yeah.
Because he plays a lot of likable characters, kind of affable, like every guy, kind of straight man roles. But to see him kind of goofing it up as this kind of, self-aggrandizing, self-obsessed, like, musician.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get a ton of screen time, but...
Yeah, but, like, what they are used is very good. And two, I assume the ideal is that the sacrifice really didn't work out, but because the tragedy happened... They normally, they got catapulted to fame, and which is just as terrible.
And that's what because there's a fire at the bar they're playing. Yeah. It's not really clear how that starts, but a fire starts that results in the death of a number of people. And so then they make a tribute song to it or something that becomes popular. So then that element kind of reminded me of Heathers.
Yes.
And that you have like this song that's kind of a rallying cry, and everybody's kind of like, it's this kind of sloppy, sentimental type song that people get behind. And then you have the school where people are starting to go missing and dying, and some people are sad about it, but like our main characters are more interested in, the machinations of what's happening. But the movie did do the thing that movies of that era did a lot. I don't know if it was commenting on it or just taking part in the trope of taking Amanda Seyfried, who in other movies have played like the hot girl, and throwing glasses on her and a sweater and pretending like she's plain and not popular.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was somewhat like her wardrobe choices and stuff. I mean, all of it was pretty believable. Like,
yeah, and they never turned her into like, it's never like she turned in and was like all of a sudden she was the hot girl and Megan Fox wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, I think the casting was because she's such a good actress. Like,
yeah, I think she did a great job.
Stellar. She most recently was in First Reformed, but I think she's a really good actress. And I think that's another thing why this film for me succeeds is because of the casting and the actors in it. I think and Megan Fox, I think was cast it perfectly.
And like J.K. Simmons.
Like just her role as like a sexual icon at that time and stuff.
Well, because it showed...
It's just, they use that so well in this film on multiple levels and the marketing and everything.
Yeah. Well, and two, like, so you have some of the elements of Megan Fox is like a sex symbol. So a difference between, say, this movie and Transformers. So in Transformers, that was directed by Michael Bay, she was supposed to be a high schooler. So I'm guessing like 16, 17. I don't remember the timeline and ages of those movies. But, not supposed to be older than 18 at the time, I think. And it was shot kind of like a pinup calendar that you would see.
Or a music video that Michael Bay directed.
A music video. Because, like, what was one of the quotes? He shot the cars like women and the women like cars. In terms of, like, how he kind of glared at them and stuff. And there's, like, scenes of her, like, bending over the hood, like, glistening and all this stuff. So you take that kind of perception of her, and then people thought that was all she was really good for. Mm-hmm. And in this one, she actually has a bit more to do than just being kind of the hot girl. And they kind of subverted that a little bit, and she is the danger and the one that's taking people out with her sexuality.
And I'm not saying I've looked down upon her at all for the Transformers. I liked that first Transformers film. I liked her in it, fine enough. I just maybe didn't appreciate her a whole lot. I was like, okay, they used her as eye candy. I can't knock her against that. They gave her a certain image in this film, but for me, I don't want to say it reconciled. It's rehabilitated her image or anything, but it made me look at another like multiple folds of her and maybe appreciate her more after seeing this film shortly after Transformers.
So this and This Is 40, the Judd Apatow film she was in, we're like, okay, she is capable of doing, like giving good material, kind of like anybody.
Yeah.
She's able to turn in a performance that, is a little bit more nuanced and interesting.
And it seems like she gets the material in this for sure, 100%.
Yeah, like watching the movie, like one thing I would say that was kind of a knock on it for me in a lot of these types of movies is like, well, how much agency is there to the turning evil and killing people so quickly? Is it more of she has no soul, so it's like her personality with all of the kind of goodness drained away, and that's why it's so quick and easy just to kill people and drain their blood and stuff, or eat them, or whatever she does. So it's like, well, how much of this is like, I want to do it, I don't want to do it? Like, there's really no indication that she didn't just immediately jump into doing it.
Yeah, I thought about that too this time as well. For me too, something else, I'm like, okay, what is this film really about? I felt like thematically, it is definitely about maybe having some, childhood friends and kind of growing past them. And maybe you realize, hey, they're not good people.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that she was bad when she was a demon. Towards the end of the film, they even talked about the bad things she did when she was a kid. She's like, I don't know what she did to Needy, but, she did something to her or whatever, and they call it out. So it's like, I think part of it is however much influence the demonic part had in her actions, I think the story is the fact that Needy learned that her friend, even though she, I don't want to say idolized her, but, even just had a crush on her, like just her best friend in the world, she started growing up and realizing, hey, my best friend's kind of shitty and I need to let her go.
Well, and two, there was even like a moment, like from Needy's perspective, before they went to the bar, when she was talking about, when you go out with Jennifer, you need to look cute, but not upstage her.
Yeah.
So I think there was some element too of maybe the reason that she was, Jennifer's friend that she kept around was she wanted like the emotional support and, compliment, of a friend, but then not someone that would upstage her and possibly take away attention. So somebody that was just kind of complimentary to, and was not going to be the one that the guys would gravitate towards herself. So she wanted somebody that was kind of like the sidekick role.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's a lot of, men and women where that type of dynamic exists. Because I see stuff now, I see relationships between people, and it's, like platonic friend relationships, and it's like, and this person really is just a sidekick, and this other person really doesn't want them to be equals. They just want them to be a notch below them.
It's like they really do suck them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they really do. Yeah. And that's exactly what she did before she was even a demon to Needy.
Yeah. And then after she turns into the demon, then, she kills. So she killed like the foreign student, the foreign exchange student, who was kind of an innocent guy that hadn't done anything wrong. She killed the emo dude that Needy thought was cool.
Yeah. And it was because Needy said something about him being cool. And it is that thing of like, oh, do you just want this person to make your friend jealous or to show your friend like...
Yeah.
But before that too, she kills the baseball or the football player.
Yeah.
Whose dad is Dauber from Coach.
Yeah,
Patrick Starfish.
Yeah, like he was like, oh man, it's Coach.
This
Dauber.
film has a lot of good cameos, I think.
And then like Chris Pratt's in that bar scene for a very short period of time. I think that would have been before he was on Parks and Rec. So it was really before, because he had been in stuff around then. And he was mostly in that era played kind of like smarmy douchebag characters, because he was in that James McAvoy movie Wanted. And some other stuff.
I've never seen Wanted, but I know what you're talking about.
He was the coworker that worked with McAvoy. That was like...
when he showed up in this, my wife was like, man, he just seems like so many people we went to high school with. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean...
dress, apparel, everything.
And even trajectory.
Look. Yes.
Somebody that was kind of like... seemed like they were... kind of going after anybody they could, and kind of crass and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then... later in life, they're a little bit more socially conscious or religious.
Yeah.
And some of the people, like, not about Chris Pratt, because I don't really know anything about his personal life, but, some people that I went to high school with, like, not to make this all about remembering things. You see people post all this kind of stuff on social media, and it's like, I know this is completely inaccurate, and you're not a good person. So it's just interesting. But like, he was a small role. He's only a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's referenced later in the movie, but never appears again.
Yeah, we'll see how things go with him after the whole church thing. I'm fine if they don't make a Guardians 3. Honestly, with James Gunn and all that stuff, I'm fine.
I mean, some of that stuff too. There's a lot to unpack in that discussion.
There is, but man, I think he should have been more outwardly. I think he should have tackled that head on, even though he released a statement.
Well, I mean,
whatever.
I think too. Like, part of it is he's so outspoken, but it is interesting they didn't then go after the other people that attend that church who are celebrities as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just selective and messaging and who's vocal and who's hot and all that stuff. So I mean, taking all of that out of context and going back to the movie, like the movie itself did have like an interesting look at high school. Granted, I think most of these people in this movie were in their mid-20s, not like 17, 18, because I don't remember people looking like Megan Fox when I was in high school.
Now, there was one girl I knew. I went to middle school with her, and she popped it, and she looks a lot like Megan Fox and just has that feel and everything.
Yeah.
But there was one, it was one girl.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she went to PRP long, because I don't think she did. But she even black hair, everything.
Yeah, I mean, we like...
But it is not, normally don't have Megan Foxes walking around.
Well, I mean, but too, though, it's just virtue of somebody being 25 years old, 20-something years old.
That's the thing about this girl. She looked, like in middle school, she looked like she was 20.
Well, like, I remember when I was in, like, middle school that there were people that you would, like, not see, and then, like, people I'd have, like, one class with wouldn't see them again until 8th grade. And it's like, are you sure you're not supposed to be in college?
Yeah.
Like, you look... But, I mean, there's dudes, too, that would look, that have, like, full beard and stuff, and, like, 9th grade and 8th grade, they could probably buy beer. I mean, because people did.
Yeah.
People did go buy beer.
Mike King.
But,
pulling up my notes.
But, I mean, I think that the movie had good, like, touches of, like, the high school type experience. Like I said, the things to me, as you mentioned, like, I wasn't a huge fan of Juno, and some of that crops up here, too. When it's all of the kind of dialogue, it's like, oh, you two are lesbi-gay, or you're so lime jello of me. So it's all of the little quirky things I don't think age super well.
Well, I think they're intentional, because I think it's supposed to be like, this is a little different world these kids are in, and it just signifies, hey, they're part of a different world that you're not in, maybe. You know what I mean? Like for me, like I'm totally fine with it, because you're like, because kids do come up with stupid stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Fortnite dances. I don't know what kid slang is now, but you know what I mean? They're just, the kids have a need to create their own language sometimes. And whether or not it works out or even sounds natural in films, even now being 10 years removed from this and further away from high school and stuff, I'm even more like find it entertaining on some level. Not that I think it's like, oh, this is super funny dialogue.
Yeah.
It's just funny from a perspective of what kids do with language, and they do make up stupid words. It's like that. You're not going to talk like that in 8 years. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like, and I understand that, maybe from other perspectives, there were people that talked like that. It's just, at that point in time, me not being too far out from high school and finished up college, like I didn't remember any groups really using the type. And there's other movies too, because like Superbad was a movie that was like, the Guy movie with Michael Cera and Jonah Hill. And they had a little bit of slang terms between them, but some of those did seem like things I remember people saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't kind of quirky for quirky's sake. Yeah, I mean, I think that Jennifer's Body was less in that quirky mode than Juno.
It's very light. It crops up, but it's very light. It is definitely pulled back, and it doesn't get in the way of, I think, everything else going on.
And then, like, the movie itself, like, directed by, Karen Kusama did a great job directing. Like, it looks great.
The music, I think, is really good, because even, like, the bad music is always funny.
Yeah.
Because that song from, what is the name of the band? Low Shoulder?
Yeah.
That always pops up, and it's always funny every time when you see, like, the kids moping around. And two, like, Mean Girls, it's hard to do that again because of the way school shootings have just exploded.
Oh, because Amanda Seyfried was in Mean Girls.
Oh, yeah, she was.
Yeah,
Did I say Mean Girls? I meant Heathers. But Heathers, it's hard to remake Heathers in the same way.
School shootings, Columbine, and
I know they did that show. I don't know, but I feel like this is a good way to look at how tragedy affects a school without having to have a shooter come in. You know what I mean? And have a satirical look at it. But yeah, I loved so much of the music in this film when it was played for laughs or just straight music. Even the emo kid when he's driving to see Jennifer. What song is he listening to? It's a punk cover of, I think I might have wrote it out. Oh, I Can See Clearly Now.
Yeah.
Because there were so many, I listened to a lot of stupid punk covers of all these different songs in high school.
Well, because even recently Weezer just released an album that's like a bunch of covers of 80s songs.
Yeah. It seemed like punk bands and ska bands loved covers of stuff. Like they would just do so many covers.
You know what this song needs? Let's throw some trumpet in here. Let's throw in.
I listened to a lot of that stuff. So I don't know.
It comes with a pair of checkered Vans shoes. with the shoes being the checkerboard color. I mean, like, yeah, so it was somewhat of an encapsulation of a time period. So like I said, like 2009. So that was right after college. You know, like I graduated in 2008. So I was like after college, and that, you know, like I had been out of high school for a number of years. But then it didn't really focus as much on the stuff in school. Like there wasn't a ton of the cliques and all the stuff between people. You know, it kind of then focused more in on the relationship between like Needy and Jennifer. And
kind of, you know, just crushes and stuff like that, and you know, small relationship stuff. It wasn't on a big scale like say Mean Girls or anything like that.
And then I'm forgetting the name Chip or Young Neil.
Yeah.
Where
he was great in it too, I thought.
Yeah, because he was great in that he was like, hey, your friend is not so great.
Yeah.
And kind of jealous of that even before things happened. But then at the end, like, wasn't wrong. But then at the same time, like, the relationship between him and Needy, like, you could see that he was going to be in play and somebody that Jennifer goes after. And then after Needy kind of blows him off.
Just like, you know, bad friends that go after your boyfriend or ex-boyfriend or whatever.
And the way that she kind of blows Chip off is what kind of causes him. Like, if she had just had him go with her, then it doesn't play out that way and it ends differently.
But she wanted him to stay far away from, you know.
Yeah. So then he goes anyway, and then Jennifer tries to seduce him. And then, you know, after he's already gone a little bit along the way, is like, oh, I can't do this. And then she starts trying to kill him and stuff. And I also thought it was like hilarious when he showed up and he's like, yeah, I went to the Super Target and I got some condoms. And she's like, and Needy's like, oh, cool. So like, 'cause I totally know people that would say stuff like that.
I think everybody does such a great job on the performances. Yeah, and like the writing, the dialogue, just I don't know, just so much the tone of this film. I love the tone of it.
When like
it's
J.K.
like satire and just also just fun horror.
I loved like J.K. Simmons when he gets the tissue with like his prosthetic limb or his hook and hands it to the guy, and like it's just like these weird touches. And then he's this character that's kind of like a much more like nebbish teacher type than he typically plays. He's not playing J. Jonah Jameson or Whiplash or whatever. It's him being a lot more just kind of like, oh,
it's just almost straight for comedy. You know, when he hears the kids screaming because he's getting killed in the woods, you know, he's like, let it all out, buddy.
And then he like, but then it like continues to go on in a way that sounds suspicious. So he goes to check it out. So, you know, like there's a lot of funny performances in it. But then too, I think part of the movie, like it starts out with kind of the present day where you see Amanda Seyfried.
Yeah, and I had kind of forgot that it started that because I'm like, oh, you know, you guys are watching the extended version. Is that spoiling too much? Like, is that the right move? But I didn't realize that the theatrical one did that too. I just had forgotten about it.
So she starts out in the mental institution, and then you find out the reason why is that when she finally she stops Jennifer from completely eating Chip, and then he stabs her with the wood or the pole or whatever. So she's able to go back to Jennifer's house and like stab her to death. And Jennifer's mom comes in, so obviously she gets committed for that.
And I love that sequence too. I just love the way it's handled. It's not like a giant big action sequence, but just the slow motion and falling on top of her. You know, like I just think that's handled so well. She absorbs so cool.
Some of the demon powers, so she's able to then break out of the mental institution she's in and go kill the band. As retribution. And you know, like so, an ending that's somewhat satisfying, you know, in terms of like these kind of just smarmy douches that cause all this to happen.
At least they got theirs, you know, aside from all the other victims in the film, at least those guys who kind of started this whole thing, you know, got theirs at the end.
And two, like having not watched this movie until now, like I had thought that it would have been more predatory guys that caused that to happen to her and her kind of going after that type. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't that at all. It was mostly her going after guys that weren't really the problem. Because like the foreign exchange dude and the emo dude and like Chip, like those weren't the guys that caused that type of stuff to happen. They were just kind of more normal characters. So it was a little bit different approach because it wasn't her going, and like even the football player that she took out hadn't really done anything bad on screen. It wasn't like they were, you know, all these guys are kind of like the date rapist, terrible person.
Yeah, he was like mourning his friend. It too, like, you know, is it, I don't know the framing of it, but like, you know, is that because the women who are often victims of these guys did nothing wrong also. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like, it's just like, okay, this is the bad part of it.
Because there's not a ton of like a morale detail to it or things like that. And it's not even as much of like a cautionary tale.
No, it's
just
a
more
fun
of a
horror.
heightened-
It's a fun like horror film, but settled around kind of high schoolers. And definitely from a female perspective.
Yeah. Because written and directed by women, which, unfortunately is still not super common, like on the budgeted level promoted by studios.
Yeah.
Because at this point, like with indie film, because I saw somebody posted their top 5 or 10 movies from the past 10 or 5 years type list. And somebody was kind of going off on them for not including indie films and stuff. And it's like, well, what's your definition of indie? Because there's the indie film that has Brad Pitt in it they made for $2 million and they sell to Amazon that was with named directors and just independently produced, or like Steven Soderbergh's recent movies and stuff. You have the movies where like known quantities secure money from investors and then sell it to a studio or to Netflix or something like that. That I don't really count as indie.
Valerian was an indie film and it was $150 million.
Yeah. I mean, so
the first Ninja Turtle movies was an indie film.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of like recent things, like I don't know that I count some of these types of things as indie films. If
I mean, you could say low budget, $1 million less if you're, you know what I mean? Like that's a different classification.
So even in that level, so the $1 to $5 million budgeted level, there's not. I mean, maybe it's just because there's not as much visibility, but you don't see as many movies in that category kind of get released by women that get a good push and get put out there where they're super visible. And at the same time, you have the movies like Wonder Woman, We're Restricted by a Woman, and that's a huge monster success and stuff like that.
Captain Marvel is only co-directed by a female, right?
Yeah, it's co-directors. But you're starting to see more of a turn where studios are starting to put more women and people of color in directing roles on movies that happen to deal with people, women and different types of characters in a way that makes sense because they have a little bit better perspective on those lives than somebody that's not that.
I think this one was just a great 1-2 punch of a great, I think a great writer. Cause I watched I think most of United States of Terror, the first season of that, Juno, I like Juno a lot. I haven't rewatched it. I saw it once in theaters. I really liked it. I didn't feel the need to revisit it, but I've just liked the story and like the dramatic side, and just I don't know. It's just the lens it looked at.
Well, and two with Diablo Cody, like I think I like her later works more than her earlier works, just because they're a little bit more naturalistic and not as much, like I said, kind of the kind of showy dialogue.
Yes, yeah. And that was her first time through. I'm sure she probably was trying to make a stamp and people like recognize who she, and so she's like, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. I can just tell a good story.
Yeah, and something like it's one of those things too. Like even like some of the Tarantino movies, somebody can be turned off by the kind of dialogue style.
I mean, it's why Shane Black got noticed in Hollywood by the way he wrote his scripts and the dialogue, even just on the descriptors. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a way to put a stamp on things. I think in your personality, but yeah. Tully was pretty good, and then Young Adult I think was really good as well. But I think it's a 1-2 punch because I think great director.
Yeah,
from some of the things I've seen of hers. But I think she did a great job on this for sure.
Well, definitely a capable director that could handle bigger properties or whatever she wanted to do if it came her way. And two, one of those things like out of this movie, regardless of if you love it or hate it, like I think it's a shame we don't see more movies. I mean, granted, this movie didn't make a ton of money. It had a budget of like $16 million, I think, and it didn't make that back. Because let's see, the budget.
Oh, that's a shame.
The budget was estimated at $16 million, and the U.S. gross was $16.2 million. So if you take into account video sales and TV and foreign, it could have theoretically made some money back, but it wasn't something that encouraged them to make a sequel or to produce kind of that creative team for other projects. Because unfortunately, the way a lot of Hollywood works is, I think from what a lot of I've heard, if you get a project that doesn't knock it out of the park box office wise, that's why it's very important for working directors to have their next project in production before their current one releases. Because sometimes if something comes out and doesn't do well, you're kind of stuck with the stigma.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you can just consistently keep working.
You got a second chance before things start to
That's
drop.
how people will fail up. I mean, because a lot of people... Because like Zack Snyder, so Watchmen did not make money, but just having those other projects that did, and you know, a lot like Jason Reitman has not made a ton of money with recent projects, but just having all these ones in the works and the new Ghostbusters.
And it's the nature of it. Things have to make money for them to make it, but also too, it's just a shame that these films can't be looked at. You know, I mean, you're looking at marketability, but they can't be looked at what was this film a success, you know, creatively?
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many more films. Like I think this film's so much more successful than a lot of films that were, you know, financially or creatively successful. Like to me, I like this better than the new Halloween, you know, but the new Halloween made $250 million.
Well, I think part of it is, I mean, I don't even know that when they marketed this, if a big part was from a female writing and directing crew. I think it was just, oh, Megan Fox is hot and there's murder and stuff.
Demons.
So I think,
and two, this was rated R.
Yeah.
So they may have actually cut out some of their audience, you know, that there may have been certain people who looked at this film and thought, oh, they're just, you know, leaning on the girls kissing and stuff. Like, I'm going to pass. But maybe the people that would have showed up would have been teenagers and they were cut out because it's rated R. I don't know. It's hard to say where this failed.
And two, there are
box office wise.
There are R-rated movies where, because the Tom Green movie, Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that, like, I don't know how true it is. I haven't done all the research myself. But like a PG-13 movie that came out the same weekend as that made a ton of money because teens paid to go to that movie and then went and saw Freddy Got Fingered instead.
Yeah.
Because they loved Tom Green and couldn't get their parents or whatever to buy the tickets. And I knew people who did that. Like I think I had done that before. Bought a ticket to a PG-13 and walked into an R. I tried to do that for Resident Evil, but they were checking tickets at the door, unfortunately, because I guess that was a pretty high occurrence of that. But like, you know,
Heaven forbid you see a zombie get shot.
Yeah.
The guy gets sliced up by lasers digitally.
I think that with Jennifer's Body, it may have been it was promoted as more of like a male focused, you know, to a male audience. I mean, a lot of times,
who knows?
Yeah, so it's just I would like to see more projects just get made because even though like to me this wasn't like one of my favorites. You know, I don't know if you would call it meta horror, but it's kind of straightforward.
Yeah, it's straightforward, but I think it's straightforward with a conscious and, you know, and a perspective. And so it has an identity that it's not just mimicking, you know, a horror film that they have seen before or a certain genre that they liked.
Because I mean, I'd rather see something like this than another cash grab attempt at a sequel for a series or but the way things work is you got to kind of go with the sure bet, and the fact that this movie didn't make money was part of, you know, if you make your budget back, or if you make your budget, you typically spend, you know, 1 to 2 times your production budget on these types of movies on marketing. So you need to, and then there's, you know, the studios only get a certain cut of the theatrical release anyway. So you need to like quadruple your budget in some cases for it to actually be profitable.
And this film is not on streaming, so they seemingly haven't, I don't think I've ever seen it on streaming.
Yeah, it's
from what I remember. So they have not sold it to anybody.
It's something that put back out in the digital space today, I think could grow more of a following.
Me too, yeah.
Because a lot of movies just didn't hit it out on their first run in theaters, especially when there's like an element of comedy or subversiveness to horror that can hurt its box office potential. So I think
maybe they played up the laughs a little bit in the trailer. I don't know.
Because like Tucker and Dale versus Evil was a movie that didn't really do anything theatrically. It's just like a festival movie. But then on streaming services, it's become very popular. I think this movie could have a similar life if it was on those services and made available. But at the same time, for them, they may not have gotten an offer for it that made any financial sense to do it. Because when you put a movie on streaming, it does effectively kill your DVD and Blu-ray sales. And if they're offering you kind of a lowball number that's not even worth your time, it's like, well, I could make a few million over the next 3 years if it just got sold.
If they're like, hey, $50,000, like whatever, it doesn't matter. We've already taken a loss on that. We're just going to keep it, you know?
But if it's a movie that consistently has sales over the years, then you might want to take that revenue stream versus completely killing it for a one-time kind of lowball lump sum. So who knows? But I mean, I think it's a movie that people probably didn't give a chance. And I didn't watch it at the time because like, well, I don't want to see the kind of goofy horror movie with the girl, you know, with
just dialogue from Gino, but demons.
Yeah. But then like rewatching it, it's like, well, you know, it wasn't, I think a big part of it too, it wasn't through the lens of like 45, 50-year-old dude directing this, shooting like all the ass shots.
Which, you know, you reminded me of, it's almost like, what was that McGee film on Netflix?
Oh, the babysitter.
Yeah, that like that's like
Yeah.
that there was such a disconnect in that film versus how this film feels so much more authentic on so many levels. You know what I mean? And it's like, they're different films, but kind of the same tone, or at least an attempt at the same tone, where that's a little bit more goofier at times.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a somewhat failed version of this type of film.
Yeah. I mean, because, we talked about the babysitter. I wasn't huge on that.
Yeah.
Just because you hit a lot of familiar beats. You throw in like, oh, here's some gory deaths. This male lead protagonist who is your audience surrogate that everybody who wrote and directed this movie felt like at some point.
And thinly drawn characters all the way around.
There's hot girls that make out, and then there's all this stuff going on. And it's like a pretty easy blueprint to sell. Because before the podcast, we were talking about unnamed indie films. And it's like, well, they just throw in some like nudity and stuff. They might be able to sell things a little bit better. Unfortunately, that's true. But then at the same time, weaken the product probably. And
we're not saying like, oh, that's the good, but it's
not
how
saying
that works when you're working on a certain budget. Just because we see so many small indie films get financed that are $40,000 films, because they're like, oh, there's going to be a lot of boobs in this, and all of a sudden you see the Indiegogo go shoot up.
Yeah, and it's like not saying that, like, I mean, personally, I think everything needs to be earned in a script and not just thrown out there just to try to draw stuff in for cheap, crass thrills and exploitation. But it's just interesting how that works. But yeah, this movie was one that was kind of overlooked at the time. If it came out today, I think there'd be a lot more push behind it. But then you also have the unfortunate element of the political climate on the internet, and Twitter would probably be even more divisive today.
But who knows? It may have got more buzz at the time. Nobody just said anything about it. I mean, Twitter did Twitter start in 2008?
Twitter, I think, was 2007 or 8, because I was on it in 2008 when it was still a text message service. The
only thing I heard about this film was I saw the marketing, and then just hearing Diablo Cody on podcast or whatever, and I was like, okay, I'm in. I want to see this. I want to see this movie because I like her perspective, and I heard her talking about it, and heard her talking about Juno and stuff. So that's the only reason why I saw it. Is probably wasn't even the marketing so much as me just kind of following her. And kind of having faith, like I want to see what she does with her second big film. So
I mean, because back then film Twitter wasn't as much of a thing.
No,
because like 2009, 8, because 2008 and 9, I think for the most part, a lot of people who use Twitter, if you kids today, it was you had a unique number that Twitter gave you that you would text what you wanted it to post. So you would just text it. And then you receive text messages from Twitter, and that's why there was the character limit that had your friends post. So it was essentially like group text messaging before that really existed.
Yeah.
So it was social media for a dumb phone and for a smartphone. And you didn't follow as many because there weren't as many big celebrities on there. There weren't as many journalists and like critics and reviewers and filmmakers on there. Or if they were, it was a lot smaller scale use of it, where they were mostly conversing with friends.
Yeah, I followed a couple people that worked at like 1UP, the game site, and then you guys, everybody from college, and then I made that account private because I don't remember what I posted on there in college, so I made a new one.
It's unfortunately like a thing that a lot of people are going to have to deal with these days, because like I just wonder how many people would get offered jobs on films or things that put them in the public eye, that if you were to go and scrub through everything they said, you could find something problematic.
No smartphones in this film. She even goes to the library to look up knowledge about demons.
Yeah, it was kind of a throwback to like that prior to that technology.
Yeah.
And characters didn't even really call each other on the cell phone.
No, yeah.
Because she could have easily called Chip if he had a cell phone, like, hey, where you at?
Yeah. Well, Chip did have a cell phone, remember? Because when he's in the pool, she's trying to get it out and it's not working.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of times these movies, if you just frame it in a way that you use technology, you ruin the story.
Yeah.
And it all falls apart. Like how many episodes of Seinfeld don't work if they have cell phones. But like this movie really wasn't focused on technology or social media whatsoever.
Yeah, I think for me it feels like it's the dialogue, the little spice of dialogue is not too heavy to where it's like will be cringy in 10 years, but I think
it's not all the characters.
I think just the story and everything will hold up for me over time. You know what I mean? Like 20 years, people can go back and look at this. Like, there's no smartphones or whatever else, but the core story and the characters feel true enough to where this will survive for me.
And sometimes technology stuff can date a movie more than it helps it. But Yeah, so I guess we can wrap this up and give it our scores out of 10. So what would you give this, Sean?
I mean, again, I've liked this film a lot, and maybe my love for it has only grown. It had been a long time since I'd watched it, but I mean, like I don't really have any complaints about this movie.
Yeah.
Like I give it at least a 9, maybe a 9.5, and maybe it's just because I think it's a really fun movie and it's really funny. And for me, that bumps the score up a lot on a film. If it's just an easy rewatch, and this was one that I watched a whole lot. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just give it a 9.5 just because I want to. But for me, this and Drag Me to Hell, which came out around that era, I felt like, we're just like, I'm like, oh man, these are it for me. Like these are 2 new films that I can be excited about and rewatch a lot, because a lot of horror films I liked around that time, but none that I got into that and I rewatched a lot, like I did like Evil Dead or something like that. But this and Drag Me to Hell around that era are 2 films that, yeah, absolutely really, really liked. And just, I feel like there's just a lot of layers to this film, and it warrants rewatches because of all the little things that it kind of pokes fun at, and just because it's a flat out fun movie as well.
Let's see. So the score on IMDb is 5.2 out of 10. The Metascore from Metacritic is 47. And a lot of these Metacritic scores when they're older aren't as accurate because there's only like 29 reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd fall like a 7 on it. You know, like for this type of movie, it's a solid movie from this era. Because what was it? Prom Night 2, something Mary Lou, similar-ish. And kind of like supernatural powers at a high school type thing. But this is like a better done version of that type of movie. It doesn't have as many cringy moments, and it doesn't have any moments that leave you feeling like really gross or dirty like some of those movies did. Or like a lot of like 80s horror movies and stuff. So it doesn't really have that grit to it. It feels like a more kind of like modern type movie. But it does make sense of Diablo Cody. I think I said had done some like script cleanup on the Evil Dead remake. But that one was like kind of clean of any stylistically focused dialogue. Yes, I mean, I think
she knows how to construct a good story. Like, take her dialogue out of it.
Yeah.
And like just from Juno, I think that emotionally that worked on a lot of levels. And then this film I just feel like the story just flows so well.
Yeah.
So it feels effortlessly. You know what I mean? I feel like everything connects, and it's satisfying, and it doesn't feel overwritten on complexities of plot, or anything like that.
Yeah, it wasn't really overreaching. It was doing like a straightforward kind of genre movie with, some little things in there that could possibly be some social commentary or just things like that, but it wasn't overbearing, and it was played pretty much straight as a like horror flick. The type of thing we don't see as much of anymore. I mean, I don't know. Like, streaming services, we get stuff every now and then.
Yeah. From that era, it just felt like we weren't seeing a lot of films like this taking this specific tone. Tone just felt like something more from the 80s, but updated. Yeah. And like, you think a lot of the horror films I saw from that era were pretty much straight horror films, straight horror remakes. It was just, this felt different but familiar, and I think that's why I fell in love with it so quickly.
Yeah, and too, like, in that era, that was before the Paranormal Activities kind of took over and made found footage the focus for a while. Yeah. And that type of supernatural, like the kind of ghost supernatural, but kind of became the focus of horror. Because in the 2000s, you had like the remake craze. You had like The Hills Have Eyes, Dawn of the Dead. You had the resurgence in zombie stuff, and then you had, I guess, like Hills Have Eyes, and they try to remake all those different properties they possibly could.
And then I guess Friday the 13th came out this month, right? 2009.
Yeah, it came out in 2009.
I saw that in theaters too, and I enjoyed that in theaters, but this just had like way more to it, So
you had the remake craze, and then there was the zombie resurgence. So it was on the cusp between that and the kind of paranormal bent that a lot of stuff would take with ghost things. And then, so it was kind of like that weird no man's land, because like Drag Me to Hell didn't make a ton of money either.
I know.
And that was Sam Raimi coming off the Spider-Man franchise. I mean, I think it still made enough, but it wasn't like a breakout hit compared to what the budget was. Yeah, it's like an interesting era for horror. There's like a few movies that kind of fit in between the mold of like the remakes and the remake/zombie movies, and then the upcoming supernatural.
And for me, those are the ones that stand out. So, it's kind of like a lesson like, hey, you can follow the trends and make a little bit of money, but if you want to make something that maybe people will remember, or at least maybe have an impact on that won't be easily forgettable, try something a little bit different, even if they are somewhat straightforward, like Drag Me to Hell and this. Like, I just do something popular that is easy to digest, but maybe not follow the same trend of the last 15 money makers of that era.
Yep. So I think that'll wrap up our discussion of Jennifer's Body. If you're listening via iTunes, do us a huge favor and leave a review. That helps other people find the podcast. If you're listening if you're watching/listening via YouTube, we always enjoy seeing the comments there. Unless you want to complain about the fact that we took too long to get to the movie. And for some reason, like a few of our episodes got popular in foreign countries because I think they thought it was the full movie. So like they would just start getting a bunch of views weirdly, like in Mexico and India, and then get a bunch of thumbs down.
We should just make every episode figure out the length of the movies and make sure every podcast episode is the same one. Just to boost our numbers and get some downvotes.
Yeah, well, we don't want to do that. But yeah, so that we always enjoy seeing comments and feedback on any platform. And you can find all the work we're doing at houseofavstore.com. Find links to all of our social media accounts of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Like I said, Chad Short They Knock should be out. And you can check out that Bloody Disgusting World of Death series that has Shared in it as well. So the short film stuff is out there. And if you want to follow us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at TheWilliamCaps.
And I'm at Blevins Sean.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House of Azor podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video